He didn't lose his faith. He was destroyed by it. Imagine believing in something so deeply that it consumes your very soul until the world begins to call you insane. Søren Kierkegaard wasn't just a philosopher. He was a man who loved God so completely that it broke him. He looked around and saw people praying, not out of faith, but out of fear, worshiping comfort instead of truth. The crowd is untruth, he said, and for that, society turned against him. He stood alone, against the church, against false believers, against the hollow religion of routine. Every word he wrote struck like lightning, exposing hypocrisy and self-deception. Each truth he spoke cost him another friend, another fragment of peace. In the end, his faith didn't save him. It consumed him. This is not a story of belief. It's a story of what happens when faith becomes a burden too heavy to bear. Copenhagen, early 19th century, narrow cobblestone streets, horse-drawn carriages, flickering lanterns. In a world ruled by reason and fear of the unknown, one man dared to leap, not into certainty, but into truth. Søren Kierkegaard, the philosopher who died for faith. Copenhagen, 1810. Streets narrow, fog rolling over cobblestones. A young Søren walks alone, coat pulled tight against the cold. Lanterns flicker, illuminating faces of merchants, preachers, and drunkards. Yet he notices nothing. His mind is elsewhere, tangled in questions no one dares ask. Narration. He was different, not for his solitude nor for his melancholy, but for the weight he carried, the weight of truth and faith. While the world chased comfort and convention, Søren sought something more, a life that dared to embrace God, not society's shallow morality. Søren pauses near a church spire, gazing at the cross that stretches into the sky. A gust of wind blows his papers from his hands. Notes on despair, ethics, and existence flutter into the night. He kneels, gathers them, and whispers to himself, "If faith is real, it demands everything, even my sanity." In his small room, candlelight flickers across the walls lined with books. Kant, Hegel, Plato, and Augustine stare back at him like silent judges. Kierkegaard writes feverishly in his journal, wrestling with an idea no one else will confront. That faith is not comfort, it is a personal ordeal, a terrifying leap into the unknown. Narration. Faith is not inherited, it is chosen, it is lived. And the moment a man understands this, he steps into solitude, a place where ridicule, fear, and despair wait patiently. He pauses and looks at a painting of Christ. Tears streak down his face. The young philosopher whispers almost inaudibly, "To follow him is to embrace suffering." Willingly. At the university, Søren lectures quietly, daring to question conventional morality. Fellow students smirk, professors frown. They call him strange, obsessive, even dangerous. Society prefers reason, order, and safety. Søren preaches passion, devotion, and the necessity of subjective truth. Narration. Most men live their lives avoiding fear, avoiding choice, avoiding God. Søren sought the opposite, a confrontation with existence, with despair, with the divine, and the world hated him for it. Søren leaves the lecture hall. Snow falls softly on the cobblestones. His breath forms clouds in the air. He murmurs to himself, "If they cannot see the weight of truth, it is not my burden to convince them." Late at night, Søren stands on a balcony, gazing over the rooftops of Copenhagen. The city sleeps, oblivious to the storm of ideas raging in his mind. He knows what awaits him: ridicule, isolation, emotional torment. Yet he also knows something profound, that to live authentically, he must embrace faith fully, without compromise. Narration. The first step in true faith is the willingness to leap, even when reason screams against it. Søren did not leap blindly. He leapt consciously, aware that the abyss below might devour him. And in that leap, he found his first glimpse of freedom. Søren turns back to his room, clutching a letter he never intends to send, a manifesto of his inner struggle. He writes one final line before sleep: "Faith is not a reward. It is a trial, and I will endure it alone if I must." Søren sits alone in his dimly lit room, candlelight flickering over a pile of books and scattered manuscripts. Outside, the streets of Copenhagen bustle, unaware of the storm inside him. He writes in his journal, "Despair is not a sin, it is the condition of existence. Yet most live in denial, avoiding it at all costs. I will confront it fully without excuses." He paces the room, stopping to gaze at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes, weary yet intense, reflect a man burdened by the knowledge that life's meaning cannot be found in comfort or popularity, only in the courage to face the self. At a small cafe, Søren overhears conversations that ignite both anger and sorrow. Men speak of wealth, reputation, and social climbing, while women chatter about gossip and appearances. The superficiality of the world stabs him like a dagger. Narration. Society fears the individual who knows himself, who refuses the mask. Søren saw through their smiles, their polite laughter. He knew that despair is not their enemy. It is their unacknowledged companion. A young man glances at him curiously. Søren meets his gaze and, without speaking, conveys more wisdom than any lecture could hold. The weight of truth is heavier than applause, heavier than friendship, heavier than the fleeting joys people chase. Late at night, Søren writes a letter to a close friend, though he knows he may never send it. His words are raw, revealing the inner battle few could understand. "I am trapped within myself, torn between longing for human connection and the impossibility of sharing this truth. Despair whispers that I am alone, yet I know solitude is my sanctuary. In embracing it, I confront the divine more fully than any congregation ever could." The candle burns low, and the room is silent except for the scratching of his quill. For a moment, he allows a tear to fall, not of weakness, but of profound awareness. Søren walks the frozen streets at dawn, mist rising from the harbor. Each breath is visible in the cold air, each step deliberate. He passes beggars, merchants, and soldiers, none aware of the intensity of his struggle. Narration. Faith is not a comfort. Faith is a confrontation. With despair, with the self, and with the world's indifference. Søren chose to face it without compromise, to live authentically even if that path led to isolation. He stops near a bridge overlooking the water. The wind bites at his face. He writes in the snow with a stick. "Better to endure truth alone than to live a life of comfortable lies." The scene fades with Søren standing resolute, the rising sun casting long shadows. A man determined to carry the weight of existence without surrender. Søren sits in a small chapel, empty except for flickering candlelight. The wooden benches creak under his weight as he kneels, hands clasped. He feels no divine reassurance, only the deep, unsettling silence of the universe. "Faith is not certainty," he whispers to himself, "but the courage to leap, knowing the abyss waits." He reflects on the lives of men who sought comfort in religion without confronting the self. Their devotion, he realizes, is a mask. True faith requires a plunge into the unknown, a confrontation with despair, and the willingness to trust without guarantees. Walking through Copenhagen's streets, Søren overhears neighbors gossiping about his solitary life. Merchants scoff at his ascetic habits. Young men ridicule his contemplative nature. Even women whisper, calling him strange. Narration. Society mocks the individual who dares to live authentically. Søren knew this well. The leap of faith is never applauded. It is ridiculed, feared, and often misunderstood. He pauses near a fountain, observing children play and men drink, their laughter hollow. A pang of loneliness strikes, yet he smiles faintly. The abyss may terrify others, but he embraces it willingly. Late that night, Søren writes feverishly in his journal, quill scratching across the paper. To live without faith is to surrender to despair. To live with faith is to embrace the impossible, to leap without support, to risk everything for the unknown. Most men will never understand. I am alone, yet I am free. He gazes out the window at the dark waters of the harbor. The reflection of the moon shimmers on the surface, fractured by the waves. It mirrors his soul, fragmented, searching, yet determined. At dawn, Søren climbs the hill overlooking Copenhagen. The city sprawls beneath him, indifferent, yet alive. He closes his eyes, breathes deeply, and takes a step forward. metaphorically into the unknown. The leap is terrifying, yet liberating. To confront despair, to trust the unseen, is the ultimate act of courage. Søren steps into uncertainty, knowing that faith is forged not in comfort, but in confrontation. The wind whips around him, carrying the distant cries of the city. He smiles faintly, embracing the chaos, the fear, the freedom. The journey has only begun. Søren sits in a dimly lit room, candle flickering against the walls. Letters from wealthy acquaintances and family arrive, inviting him to return to a life of comfort, fine meals, social gatherings, and the approval of society. He reads them silently, feeling the weight of their allure. A warm fire, soft beds, laughter, admiration, all offered freely. But he knows this is the trap. Comfort is the enemy of faith, he mutters. To choose ease is to forsake truth. He sets the letters aside untouched and resumes his solitary writing, reaffirming his path. Night falls. Søren walks through the foggy streets of Copenhagen, lost in thought. The shadows of the city seem to whisper his failures. What if I am wrong, he wonders. What if all this striving, all this solitude, is meaningless? A beggar approaches, asking for coin. Søren has little, but he gives generously. In the act, he realizes that faith is not only a personal leap, but a moral engagement with the world. Doubt remains, yet his choices define him, not fear. In his study, Søren confronts his own reflection in the mirror. The man staring back is gaunt, restless, and yet alive with purpose. You cannot escape yourself, he writes in his journal. Every avoidance, every distraction, every small comfort is a lie. Face despair, and you face freedom. His hands shake as he pens his thoughts, knowing that the abyss inside him is infinite. Faith is the bridge over that chasm, invisible, fragile, yet the only way forward. At dawn, Søren climbs the cliffs near the harbor. The icy wind bites his face. The waves crash violently below. He stands at the edge, feeling the full terror of existence, the fragility of life, the inevitability of death, the uncertainty of meaning. He inhales deeply and whispers, "Leap, for there is no other path. Leap, for to do nothing is to surrender to despair." He steps back, not out of fear, but in understanding. The leap is not a single act, but a lifelong commitment. His journey of faith, courage, and authenticity will continue, tested by every human temptation and fear. Søren sits alone in his dim apartment, surrounded by stacks of books and manuscripts. The silence presses against him like a living thing. Friends have drifted away. Family worries but cannot understand his obsession with truth. He writes feverishly, the candle smoke curling in spirals above him. Each word carries the weight of his convictions, but also the loneliness of his path. Solitude is not merely absence of company, he whispers. It is the presence of self, unshielded by illusions. He pauses, listening to the distant city, a world thriving without awareness of its own despair. Late at night, Søren walks the cobblestone streets. Every footstep echoes against empty buildings. He sees couples laughing, merchants shouting, children playing, all signs of life unexamined. A passerby greets him cheerfully, unaware of the inner storm. Søren nods politely, but his thoughts are elsewhere. The masses live in a dream, he records in his journal, and the dreamers are blind to the abyss below. Isolation is my teacher. Despair is my mentor. The wind carries fragments of conversation, trivialities, complaints, gossip, all meaningless to him now. Only the pursuit of truth matters. An old friend approaches, offering Søren a position at a prestigious university. Fame, respect, and financial security await. It is a chance to leave the struggles of solitude behind. Søren listens carefully, smiles faintly, then declines. He knows that comfort and recognition are seductive lies. To yield is to betray oneself, he writes in his journal later that night. Better to endure isolation than to poison the soul with empty applause. His decision leaves him free, yet heavier with the burden of authenticity. He continues his work, aware that the price of truth is often loneliness. Søren climbs the cliffs above the harbor at dawn, watching the waves crash endlessly against jagged rocks. The horizon is gray, infinite, terrifying. He closes his eyes and breathes deeply, accepting the emptiness, the uncertainty, and the silence. I am alone, he whispers, and yet fully alive. The abyss does not consume me. It defines me. Faith is not comfort. It is confrontation. With this realization, Søren's resolve strengthens. He embraces the solitude, the struggle, and the unending search for meaning. He is not broken by isolation. He is forged by it. Søren sits by the window as twilight descends. Candles flicker, casting trembling shadows across the room. The city hums faintly below, oblivious to the philosopher's contemplations. He reflects on the years of solitude, the endless questioning, and the despair he has endured. For the first time, he feels a flicker of clarity, a light within the darkness. Faith is not an answer, he murmurs, but a confrontation with the unknown. And in that confrontation, life becomes more vivid than any illusion of certainty. The room feels smaller, but his mind expands, reaching toward truths that were always just beyond the edge of understanding. Late at night, Søren engages in intense dialogue with himself, writing letters never meant to be sent. He debates ethics, existence, and divine purpose. If God exists, he writes, he is not a comforter, but a provocateur. If he does not exist, then despair is the only constant, yet even despair teaches. He reads his own words aloud, listening to the cadence, the passion, and the tremor of uncertainty. Each sentence strengthens his conviction that the spirit grows through struggle, not through ease. A sudden illness strikes a neighbor, and Søren is called to assist. Though he is ill-prepared to offer comfort, he goes, realizing that true engagement with life requires action, not mere contemplation. He sits beside the neighbor's bed, holding their hands silently, understanding that faith is not abstract. It is lived in moments of courage, empathy, and responsibility. Belief without action is hollow, he notes later. The spirit must engage even when the world offers only pain and confusion. This realization strengthens him, showing that the isolated philosopher can also touch the world without succumbing to its illusions. On a quiet evening, Søren ascends a hill overlooking the harbor. The sun sets in fiery streaks, illuminating the sea and sky in brilliant contrast. He breathes deeply, feeling a profound connection to existence itself. Life is absurd, he whispers, but within that absurdity lies the possibility of transcendence. To embrace the unknown is to embrace freedom. The wind carries his voice across the cliffs, a whisper into eternity. Søren feels a rare serenity, not from comfort, not from approval, but from the courage to face the world as it is. Years later, Søren's writings are studied in lecture halls and quiet rooms across Europe. Young philosophers pore over his journals, letters, and essays, seeking insight into the human condition. A student asks, why did he suffer so much? Another answers, because he dared to confront truth when others chose comfort. His suffering was the seed of understanding. Søren's spirit, though gone, teaches that pain, doubt, and struggle are not enemies, but guides toward enlightenment. In a dim library, a voice narrates from Kierkegaard's writings. The greatest hazard of all, losing oneself, can occur very quietly in the world, as if nothing at all were happening. Readers feel a chill. The words pierce modern illusions. They understand that life's deepest truths are hidden in solitude, reflection, and courageous honesty. A young scholar closes the book, whispering, he saw everything we ignore, yet dared to live it fully. Outside, the harbor reflects the twilight sky. Søren's words echo in memory. Faith is the paradox that transforms despair into hope, the invisible path through the visible chaos of existence. The camera pans over the harbor, empty ships, restless waves, symbolizing life's uncertainties. Students, philosophers, and dreamers stand quietly, contemplating the courage it takes to face the unknown. Søren's legacy is clear. The world will always struggle against truth, but the few who embrace it achieve a freedom others cannot imagine. Confront despair, embrace doubt, live authentically. Søren Kierkegaard taught that courage is not absence of fear, but mastery of it. Face your existence without illusion, and you will never be a prisoner of your own mind. If this journey through Kierkegaard's life opened your mind, subscribe and share, because true understanding should never remain silent.